concern getting ready to cause significant and dangerous impacts from Texas to New England. This is America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Molly McCollum and Jim Cantori.
We have the potential for feet of snow falling, plus catastrophic ice accretions. Nearly 30 million people are already under winter storm watches. Those will, in short order, be upgraded to warnings. Dozens of states under those watches right now, and we have a long way to go. Have an emergency kit ready to go. Travel this weekend could be impossible, and we could see prolonged power outages.
That is true. Even more dangerous. We are going to see more Arctic air into next week. So if you're stuck without power, that could be a life-threatening situation. Plus, whatever precip falls around could stick, even if it falls as rain. These are our wind chills. But notice as we go into our Monday morning, Atlanta could end up being all rain with this event. Could. Monday morning, we're down to 27.
Right.
So if things are still wet, does that then freeze and cause some black ice on the roads?
Not to mention where we don't even have precipitation falling. We've got some seriously cold, that is true, dangerously cold air in the northern tier, and it's going to stick around for a minute.
It is.
So, Jem, we want to start in the southern plains because, of course, that is where Winter Storm Fern is going to get started.
Yeah, we're going to break.
You know, potentially from an event like this, that goes on for years. That takes years to recover.
And you got to move the trees before you can.
Got to be safe, too, for the crews to get out there. Essentially, we have a long way to go with this one. Let's start in Houston, where Houston, the cold air is going to arrive much later, and that's going to give us most of the duration of this event in a plain cold rain. It is not going to be comfortable, but at least it's going to be rain. It's Sunday that I'm concerned about. That's when we start to see the cold enough air that we make the transition into freezing rain or freezing drizzle, depending on how much moisture is left at that point. But we have so many overpasses in the Houston area that spells trouble, even if it is just a glaze. How about Dallas? We're going to go on a journey in Dallas. 50s and raining on Friday. We slowly fall into the 40s, still rain. Let's stop this on Saturday morning. Now we've got temperatures that are hovering just below the freezing mark. You're starting to see the changeover into freezing rain. The big question in Dallas is how long do we stay in freezing rain? Because a transition to sleet faster, that would be great news in Dallas, right? That would mean less road impacts. I say less because we'll still see some just with the time period of freezing rain. Eventually, we get into some snow, but that is on the backside of this system when the moisture is already moving on. So it would just be a very brief window of some snow on top of the ice and the sleet that we're going to see in Dallas. So essentially, we are seeing all winter weather precipitation types. How much ice? Again, still in question how long we stay in that freezing rain, but a quarter to half an inch of ice, that is enough to cause power outages, impossible travel, and of course, even more ice when you get just to the south of Dallas. How about snow? Very sharp gradient. This is exactly what Jim was showing in the Little Rock area, where we can go from 1 to 2 inches of snow. All of a sudden, you're in double-digit snowfall. That's as you get into the Red River Valley area and then into Oklahoma, where most of the state of Oklahoma, OKC, Tulsa, you are in for some pretty big snow. The cold air arrives sooner. It cools the entire air column, and that's going to allow you in Tulsa, Stillwater, Oklahoma City. The I-40 corridor is the dividing line here, and north of that, likely to stay in snow throughout the duration of this event. We see the changeover happen for areas like Shawnee and Norman and Chickasha, all the way down to Ada, Oklahoma. This is going to be one of those events that we only see every couple of years in the state of Oklahoma, where we're talking double-digit snowfall for many of us. I mean, you look at some of these amounts, you can go years in Tulsa and OKC only seeing these very small snow amounts. And this could be a big one that, you know, it's going to stay around for a while because the air is so cold behind this. Let's talk Little Rock for a second, because the forecast, well, it's a lot more complicated. You could end up right on that line of transition between freezing rain and sleet. I think sleet is the more likely scenario here in Little Rock for the duration of the event. And then you go just north of that and you have those big snowfall totals. And then, of course, Shreveport and Texarkana. That's where we're talking about significant ice accretions. Yes, we start with rain, but I want you to watch the duration of how long we stay in the freezing rain in Shreveport and Texarkana. That would be devastating ice accretions. And then on the backside of that, Steph, maybe even just a little sprinkle of snow on top of that. But at that point, the damage is done.
It is, and notice how cold it stays as well. And so
Well, in today's Weatherwise, we've partnered with Native to share some easy tips for protecting your skin this winter. When cold temperatures leave your skin feeling dry, constant moisturization is key. Moisturizing, staying hydrated, and even adjusting your shower temperature will help keep your skin staying fabulous this winter. So let's take a look at this week's Skin Health Report. All of that cold air that Steph was just talking about, that is going to be colder and drier air that's surging all the way down to the Gulf Coast. But right now we've got those higher dew points in place, some pretty rapid temperature changes on the way too, and changes in the air mass too. So we're going to go from what is more of a muggy to noticeable to very dry Arctic air that's spilling in. Now, some of us, we already have that in place, right? The northern tier, that's where we're going to see wind chills consistently well below zero as we see this entire event unfolding. No precipitation, but it's going to be very cold. How about Philadelphia, where the dew point forecasts, again, let's measure how much moisture is in the air. Pretty dry air in place over the next 24 hours. How about a place like Detroit, also where you've got that colder, drier air that's locked in right now with our dew points in the teens and the 20s. But Houston, look at this. You're about to see some very big changes with more of a muggy air mass in place. By Sunday, that Arctic air is knocking on the door. Welcome back this morning to America's Morning headquarters. We already have winter storm watches that have been issued from New Mexico all the way into portions of the Mid-South. No surprise, right? We are approaching winter storm Ferns. These in short order will get upgraded to advisories at very least, but we'll see winter storm warnings. We'll see some ice storm warnings that are thrown out there. And by the way, there's some bitter cold air that's moving in behind this. So yes, winter weather, precipitation type is a big concern, but the duration of the cold air behind this is going to be a problem in itself. Some very cold, dense air that's going to be seeping in pretty far to the south. And of course, we're going to be watching for all different types of winter precipitation. Anything from a plain cold rain, and even spots that see that, you will eventually see a changeover to some freezing rain, like say in Houston. But the zone of ice, where we're going to see consistent freezing rain, areas like Shreveport and Texarkana, and I would even throw Dallas into the mix too, where you could eventually change over to sleet and snow. But the big question is, how long do you spend in the freezing rain? That will determine how high your ice accretions are. Oklahoma, more likely to be snow throughout the duration. But look at Little Rock. You are right on that line of who sees the freezing rain, sleet, and who sees the snow. And it is going to be an extremely sharp gradient in some of these snowfall amounts. And that's because of the precipitation type. That is always important in the south, right? And it is never easy. It is never straightforward. It is always a complicated forecast. And this one certainly falls in line with that. Shreveport, you see temperatures crashing down. This is now Saturday morning, 31. We're 29 in Dallas. We're 22 in San Angelo. But look at this huge temperature difference between Dallas and Houston. That cold air continues to funnel all the way down to the Gulf Coast, but of course, it's first in areas like Dallas and OKC, which, by the way, there we go Saturday afternoon, it's 10 degrees in OKC. It's single digits, Wichita, Kansas City, Springfield. Notice this transition to sleet in Little Rock. How long do you stay in the sleet? Well, that'll eat away at some of the eventual snowfall amounts, because most of us will see snow from Dallas to OKC, Little Rock on the backside of this, but it just depends on how long we spend in that transition time. As mentioned, it's a very sharp gradient between some of these lower snowfall amounts and some of these higher snowfall amounts. I think, Jim, it's incredible. I was looking close to the Dallas area, kind of zoomed in with that view. You know, maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow in Dallas, right, depending on, you know, how we end up.
Eventually,
then,
right?
Eventually, right? We'll get there. But then you get up to the Red River Valley, and it's like blockbuster snow. That's not that far away.
There's really an amazing snow gradient from Texas through southern Oklahoma, through Arkansas, up into Tennessee and Kentucky.
Winter Storm Fern is already on the way, and the time to prepare is now. A major concern for millions will be a coat of crippling ice. That's known to bring catastrophic danger to travel and shut down entire cities. Meteorologist Jen Cantori shows us why everyone should heed the ice warnings. Welcome back here on this Wednesday morning. A lot to unpack here with Winter Storm Fern, and we're going to start in the southern plains, starting in Houston, where actually the most of the duration of this event, we're going to stay in a cold rain. That's good, right? But there is a small window on Sunday that we will see freezing rain. And when that happens, I'm not sure why that cut off there, but as that happens, we could see enough that accretes on the roads, all the overpasses that we have in Houston, that we could easily run into some big problems. Now, let's jump into Oklahoma City over to Tulsa. This is where the I-40 corridor is really going to be the dividing line between the sleet and the snow. Thankfully, here in Oklahoma, not quite warm enough that we're going to see that transition between freezing rain. I mean, sleet, that is, you know, it's not as problematic as freezing rain, right? The travel problems aren't as big, but wait till I show you the snowfall totals for Oklahoma and you'll say, okay, well, we're going to have travel problems regardless. Cold air is crashing in single digits. Sunday, the cold air continues to funnel in, and our actual air temperatures will go below 0 in spots. In fact, OKC on Sunday morning waking up 0. That doesn't include your wind chill, but we could see some pretty hefty totals here in Oklahoma, you know, of the likes that we only see every couple of years from Oklahoma City to Tulsa. Someone is going to see a foot plus of snow. We could see multiple areas that achieve that. How about Little Rock, where forecast, well, frankly, it's a lot more complicated, right? Likely sitting right on that transition zone where we could end up in a time that we see quite a bit of sleet that eats away at some of these snowfall totals. So be careful when you look at snowfall maps right now, because this might be taking into account some hours of sleet, and that's just, you know, counting it as snow. Very sharp gradient right now between who sees the very big snowfall totals, and it is that cold, you know, cold air all the way through the column of the atmosphere that we can really see some very prolific snowfall amounts, and a very sharp gradient down to the south and not seeing as much. Now, keep in mind, those numbers will likely still change in Little Rock as we get a better hold on where that transition line is going to set up. How about Texarkana and Shreveport? This is an area I'm very concerned about for freezing rain and the period of time that we're going to stay in the freezing rain. This starts very early Saturday morning. Now we have temperatures either at or below freezing at the surface, but warmer still aloft. Look how long we stay in the freezing rain. It is almost the entire day of Saturday, overnight into Sunday. We see a brief changeover into snow, but at that point, the damage is done when it comes to the ice accretions. When you see ice accretions like this, anywhere from ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch. There will be some spots, I think, that even achieve potentially an inch of ice accretion. That is absolutely not out of the question. Jim, the fact that we are going to see this, plus the cold air that comes in after this, basically going to keep all the problems in place, tree limbs, trees, power lines. This is a long duration event.
If you can't get on the roads to repair the down trees and power lines and poles, more than likely with an inch of accretion, you can't get the power back on.
Right.
So until we thaw or get an appreciable thaw, that's not going to take place. So Molly talked about a very, very